All right, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight, March 22nd, 7 p.m. Finance Committee meeting. On the agenda tonight, we're going to discuss the updated budget review, which we're really excited about because the rumor is we're balanced. We're going to continue the recommendations on the warrant articles. We got through a lot last week. We only really have a few to finish up. On the agenda, too, is to review the minutes. I did print them all off, and then I figured out that we had already voted on the ones that I printed off. And come to find out, the March ones haven't been created yet because we need to discuss whether we're adding a lot of detail or keeping it a little bit, more vague. So we're actually meeting with...
discussed that at all yet?
No, we haven't. So the reason we haven't yet is because we're actually going to talk to council about that as well and get their opinion, and that's happening tomorrow. So as far as the agenda item of reviewing minutes, we're not going to do that tonight.
Pay for effort, though.
It was like 30 pages in my printer. I have them. I mean, I can hand them out. But I did check for correspondence. There isn't any. And then we'll run through any liaison reports and discuss them. We will meet at town meeting just before, so we'll talk through details there. Yeah.
CBA.
Yeah. So any questions on the agenda tonight before we start with the first? Okay, updated budget review. Andrew, is that yours?
Perfect, that's me. Just before we start, we did have some last-minute updates today. So the version that's printed in front of you is a bit different than what was sent out yesterday. The previous version, we were going to put some of the school positions back on grants, but we were able to bump up our revenue estimates today. And we're confident that those numbers should work for us. So those positions have been restored to the budget.
The tutor?
No, the email that was sent out yesterday, we were reducing the school budget by about $100K because they still had ESSER funds to pay for a couple of positions that they wanted to get into the budget this year, and we're able to do that now.
Okay.
So those are now operational expenses going forward.
Yes.
And so what are we using those ESSER funds for, the 100,000? What do they plan on using with them? What are they going to do with the ESSER money now that they have found money?
That would probably be a question for the school department.
So what was the thinking behind moving it from grant to operational?
They wanted to avoid the cliff next year when
It'll
those
have
funds
to
would
eventually.
evaporate.
Right. But don't all departments worry about that? I mean, the police, we cut down.
I think and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the difference is that they have people in these positions who are being paid for by grants. I don't think
Right.
we have that
Yeah,
per se with the police department. Right?
their current positions, there's current people in the positions, and their programs that they need to continue. They can't discontinue the programs. So they want that money to be rolled into the operational budget. We were kind of hoping to do it next year. For whatever reason, they feel as though it's important to do it this year, and we're just able to work it.
For this year. They might not work for next year.
Well, their budget will start with that in there next year.
Okay. But I'd just like to make note that we've got in these proposals here now, something Matt was concerned about, it, that like we've got over $600,000 now in revenue that we've found over the last few, it's materialized over the last couple of weeks that we didn't have before. And I just find it interesting that a couple of weeks ago, we didn't have $600,000 in local receipts, and now we do. And I don't know where that comes from. And I'm only doing that, I'm channeling Matt because Matt was concerned about overstating that revenue.
So to state quickly before Scott goes into detail on that, at this point of the year in the budget preparation, we do typically see that because we start out very conservatively estimating revenue, and as we get better numbers for what this year has looked like and what the year going forward looks like it's going to be, because we start low and conservative, we do tend to have at least some movement upward with the local receipts in that regard. So I don't know how much we typically see, but we also do tend to try at the beginning of the budgeting process to overestimate things like health insurance and life insurance liability, those kinds of
Waste
things.
hauling, our utilities, we were very.
Right, but those are
high on
expenses, I'm
utilities.
talking about the revenue.
But we balanced them both ways. I mean, we also
Yeah.
look at those expenses, and I think we also look, at what we were going to be, what we're forecasting, and we were pretty high on what we were forecasting for our utilities, because that's a very big unknown to us right now. 2 years ago, we were a lot more comfortable with it, and we had some long-term contracts. So, yeah, we're being pretty bullish on the economy. Again, with the revenue, we try to be conservative. That eventually could become our free cash, or would become our free cash. And being that conservative, we ended up with about $2 million of it this year.
Right, but it feels like we've gotten aggressive with our revenue just in the last 2 weeks,
Well,
to the tune of
again, we start
$600,000.
We start getting we get our estimates, we start tracking how things are coming in from last year. The things are coming in good. We were surprised, and I was surprised that actually building permit revenue was up much more than we thought it would be. So we still see that, we're pretty confident on that, so.
So when we had this budget proposal presented on March 8th, we were $600,000 less in revenue. What was that, so what estimates were we using to come up with that revenue number? Like, what was it based on?
Right, so.
Because this is what I'm trying to understand, it's like, we're 8 months into the year, and we had a revenue figure, and then 2 weeks later, we get another $600,000. How come we didn't know that estimate 8 months into the year?
Well, we didn't want to make that estimate 6 months ago. We were a lot more, and wanted to be a lot more conservative 6 weeks ago.
So a couple of weeks ago, we just decided to be flat over 23, just to be conservative. When we look at actuals through March now, remember, we started the budget process back in like November and December, so there's not enough activity there to really make any projections. For licenses and permits, year-to-date through March, we have about 330K, and if you put that on an annual basis, that's about 440K. For marijuana, that's actually 460K year-to-date. So,
We might
No.
get to $1 million. It might happen. No, this year, it might, 2023, it might happen.
it's just a byproduct of the timing. We have an early town meeting, so when we start the budget process as early as we do, we don't have the activity to analyze, but now we do. And we're still, the fiscal '24 estimate for local receipts is about 5.6 million, which is still under fiscal '22's actuals of 5.7, so it's still conservative from that respect too.
I don't know, it just makes me a little uncomfortable when all of a sudden we can find $600,000, because we're $600,000 in the hole.
I don't
So-
think we find it either. I think the other thing too is we have always been, as long as I've been here, we have always started off extremely conservative with the thought process that it is easier to add as things move along than it is to take away. It's hard, we get to this point and you got to cut because you weren't conservative enough, and now you're looking at a budget and it's, even a month before town meeting, and you're saying, okay, well, we're gonna have to cut a teacher, we're gonna have to cut a fireman, we're gonna, or, services are going to, the trash is, didn't come in as well as we thought with the amounts we're trending at, the cost, and
But this
it's
didn't
easier
appear to
to,
be an outrageous budget, especially when our chapter 70 money went up $1 million too. I don't know, I just hope the estimate,
Just question of clarification, where are you seeing the 600,000?
I would say the local receipts.
yeah, if you look at the local receipts.
I saw the
228
228, and which one's the other one?
263.
Okay, yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
maybe to something else.
What are we cutting, other than, so town planners cut, no, DPW
Town
groundskeepers cut,
planner
what is?
was put back
Yeah.
in, the school department was cutting a tutor, the police department, several positions. We're moving stormwater to ARPA funds.
So what is cut?
Reducing
What's
heating.
cut in this new one that we didn't see last time? Because there's stuff that's cut, that's in gray.
We cut a tutor.
So what's in gray was already presented.
Gray was last week.
Right, but so we did cut a groundskeeper last week?
We didn't cut a
Was I in like
groundskeeper.
a-
There was a
We
request
removed
to add that.
the request for a new position.
Nobody's losing a
All right, so
position.
cut, no cut for groundskeeper and no cut for town planner.
So, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, no department is losing a position that is currently filled.
Correct.
Well, the school department is losing a tutor.
The tutor is retiring and they're just not replacing.
But from my understanding, the tutors are stretched as they are.
This was the request of the school department.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't
They
me.
would know, they would
I
know
don't-
better. They would know better.
The same
than
with
I.
their $100,000. I don't tell them what to do with their money.
Yeah, no, I thought you
So
were.
outside of that person who's retiring, the positions that that are being removed to balance this budget are not positions where we have people who would be laid off or let go.
Correct.
So the, I guess-
Several unfilled positions.
So these two things right here.
were- Like, those were positions that we were proposing to be new positions in the budget that are now not being.
well, no, but
Town planner got put back in.
Yeah.
The groundskeeper was a position we were going to be adding in the proposed budget, and then we took it out to reduce the cost of the proposed,
But why wouldn't that be here?
because we don't have the money for it.
No, no, undercut, it wasn't here last week, what I'm saying.
It was here last week,
It was?
yeah. Gray is all the stuff we talked about last week.
All right.
I don't know if we're gonna go over it one by one, but it seems like the police department is getting hit pretty hard.
Yeah, when we had the conversation with the chief, and again, it's a lot like the conversation that we've had, that, again, the positions that are not going to be filled anytime soon. He's comfortable with it. There are 3 recruits coming out of the academy, and there are, I think, still a couple vacant positions. So he's not concerned about staffing right now. It will be something that will obviously come back next year and maybe even the year after to try and build it back to where we need it, although it will also depend on recruitment issues.
Are we using, I didn't ask this when he was here, but just thinking of it as I'm looking at it here, are we using the civilian dispatch?
The dispatch is done regionally through,
But it says one full-time dispatcher.
there's not a civilian dispatcher in the station. I think
So
occasionally
we
there
don't-
might be, but right now, an officer is in the station. The dispatching is done through Holbrook.
These
So
were
what's
positions
the-
that were budgeted for, that we knew we weren't going to fill.
Okay, so that's not, we're not
We're not cutting,
cutting a full-time dispatcher, there was not a full-time dispatcher.
there was not a person.
And there was
Correct.
not a civilian prosecutor.
Correct. That hasn't been filled
That
in
hasn't
quite
been
some
filled.
time.
So with the, cutting the 3 patrol, the 1 sergeant, and the 1 lieutenant, how many positions does that leave unfilled but budgeted for?
Is it 3 or 2?
So there was 2 patrol, he's filled those, and 1 sergeant, which he also filled.
So there are no positions budgeted for that are not filled
Well, they,
after this budget?
No, there were still 2 vacant, if I remember correctly, that we told them. I'm pretty sure there were 2 vacant.
I was gonna say, I thought that there were
5
8
patrol.
total.
Yeah, 8 total, there was 2 sergeants,
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
and I believe 6 patrol officers.
So we're
So I
still,
think
we're
it's
gonna
either
still
2
budget
or
for,
3 unfilled positions that we're keeping in the budget with the hopes that they will fill them at some point
And-
during this year.
Again, we had the conversation, a long conversation with the chief, and he was very comfortable with this.
And as we talked about last week, for anyone that wasn't listening last week or that's, doesn't remember, our goal in talking about this and kind of Scott going back and doing this the way that he did was to have it be more sustainable. Our preference would be to have all of these positions in the police budget, but if the economy doesn't greatly improve and revenues greatly improve, there would be a point with the new collective bargaining agreement where we would have to balance this out, whether it was next year or the year after or somewhere. The priority of the new contract being more attractive to keeping existing police staff and attracting more police staff was a higher priority than keeping the unfilled slots.
Right.
So if the local receipts don't materialize, say $500,000, then what happens?
Take it out of free cash?
You won't have free cash.
No, that's true.
It,
Reserves?
when we come to, I would assume when we come towards the end of the fiscal year, which would be the end of like this time next year or
The end of the third quarter.
June of next year, somewhere around that, we would be looking at the need for either transfers within the budget from places that would be able to cover it, or transfers from reserve fund or stabilization.
Yeah.
Stabilization taking a town meeting vote.
You know, we would probably put some safeguards into effect if we started seeing it to trend that way. I mean, again, we're still somewhat conservative and comfortable with these numbers. But yeah, I mean, you would impose a hiring freeze, or you would, we to make measures to reduce overtime in, DPW, police, fire. We would ask them to be careful on their expense line items and stop spending.
Stop heating the buildings.
Stop heating the buildings, or, reduce the amount of training, things like that.
So, I don't wanna be
Where
long.
does, we had 2 million of free cash certified. Where does that go now?
It's largely your capital plan.
Oh, okay, so
So-
you transferred it to cover the capital.
So Chris,
Yeah, I see.
if you run through
Yes.
the warrant and you
Yeah.
look at snow and ice and the prior year's bill and the capital plan,
Okay,
that's where
Yeah.
most of the expenditures
I-
for free cash.
I should have known
Get
that,
listed.
yes, thanks.
If you're asking, there's probably plenty of people at home.
Yes.
That too. So,
So where's the additional 100,000 from the school department? Where's that coming from? Is that part of the COVID relief essentially?
No, that was all made up through revenues.
Local receipts?
Yeah.
That was-
Some of
Just
it,
bumped it up.
some of it was from local receipts, and the other portion, 30K, was from cutting the heating budget.
But didn't we say that they had 2 positions that they were going to have funded through funding that was going to expire next year?
Right.
And they've decided to allocate those into essentially their operating budget, so we don't know what they're doing with that 100,000, correct?
I don't-
And what is that funding source? What was that funding source that's going to dry up next year?
ESSER.
ESSER funds. They're sort of like their version of a COVID fund or.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
It's specifically for schools.
So we're currently, right now in our capital plan, we have $200,000 for them for the laptops. Couldn't we try to split the difference with them if they want to, if they have an additional $100,000 now? Couldn't they put that towards the laptops and give us wiggle room in the capital
I'm
plan?
thinking that they probably have already allocated that money for some other reason. Otherwise,
And the other thing, they did state in the meeting, because I asked the question, if we said we fund the laptops at $200,000, but we don't fund all the positions, would you still put the money, $200,000, that we sort of earmark towards the laptops? Not necessarily. So that's why I think it's the appropriate thing to do, is to keep it in the capital plan. You have to spend it for the laptops. That's what the intent is. But I would also to point out that it's like, so the school department budget's going up about 8%. It's the biggest in the town. And yet, based on what was proposed by the police, we're cutting that 12%. Is that the priority the town wants? I mean, in the town, the school budget makes up, in total, 61% of the town budget. I'm not criticizing the school, I am a product of the, proud product of the Avenue Public Schools, one of 11 Haggertys that went through that, but, I mean, at some point, I don't know how this is sustainable.
But isn't that increase for the, it's coming from Chapter 70 fund increase?
It doesn't matter where it comes from.
Well, I mean, it does.
And also the police contract did go up 420,000, so.
The police contract, is it a 3-year,
It is.
and how much each year?
The first year is 400, and it should reduce slightly each year. But yeah, the bulk of it is in that first year.
In the first year, and so next year we should,
There'll
it's
still
not a
be an
huge amount of
increase,
money,
there'll
but
probably be 270,
Around that.
yeah, next year.
Marty, I understand that, the police contract, but the schools had a contractual obligation of over $1 million, which is 1.6% of the total town budget. So it's 420 for the police, it's $1 million contractual
No, it's a
obligation for the
420
school.
increase over just for this year.
That's what the schools was over $1 million.
I'm not saying, but I'm saying it's not reduced though. That's all I'm pointing out. So it was reduced by 12%, but not.
Of what was submitted, yeah, what was submitted. What I'm saying, but the schools, we didn't reduce that, that's up about 8% of what was submitted. That's all I was trying to distinguish. Submitted versus what is on the table to be approved.
Yeah, and I mean, I will agree, and again, I do find that the school department has been really good to work with on every budget. But yeah, you know, 8% would be not sustainable for us, to be able to do that year on, year out, so that's, there's no doubt about that.
Can you just explain it one more time with, we had something in the budget under ARPA or whatever for the school. They then said, no, we're gonna do it some other way, and we gave them money to do that in this budget. Am I missing something?
Mhm.
Can we not do that?
No, you're absolutely missing something.
So can somebody explain it to me one more time? We had something in the budget that was getting paid by some sort of a grant
So
funds.
the school department has positions that are being funded through an ESSA grant. It's not an ARPA grant, it's
Yeah,
a grant
sorry,
that
ESSA.
specifically goes to the school,
School-specific.
not
Yeah.
to the town.
Yeah.
I don't have control over
Yeah,
what
yeah.
happens with that grant. That grant goes away after next year. They want to continue to have those positions, and they want to fund those positions, and they wanted to put it into their operating budget this year.
I just don't know if that's a smart decision to do with how a lot of things are looking going forward, to put new positions in there. It doesn't sound like a smart decision right now to get positions that are gonna
I really
continue.
can't talk to those kind of things, because those would have been great discussions to have while the school department was here.
And there may be a
Yeah, it's a
reason,
good-
I'm sure there is absolutely a reason why they're funding the position this year, trying
But
to
didn't this
avoid
just
that
change?
funding
It's-
cliff.
They're just worried about the cliff.
But it didn't change, we changed it, they never did. We had conversations with them, we had the feeling that we could do that and that it would help us, but they want to keep it.
No, they submit, even though they knew those were under ESSER, they put them in the budget.
They have them in the budget.
Yeah.
So the budget submitted to us had them in the budget.
Yes.
When Andrew and I met after your last meeting, we thought that that would be a good place to start, you know, with moving some money to balance the budget. So we had a conversation with Felicia, and we discussed it. We were under the impression that they would be on board with us taking that 100,000 and that they could continue, but that wasn't the case, and it was a miscommunication. They would rather keep that in. So, you know, that we found out later this afternoon. So, you know, our other options were to try and further make cuts on our departments, or, again, we're still comfortable with our revenue projections. We like to be conservative. You know, there are two schools of thought. That one, we be as conservative as we were, and we create free cash, and that's how we build our capital. The other school of thought is you're not conservative at all. We just build the capital into the budget in the future, and you don't have free cash. I wasn't ready to make that move yet.
The schools did, in place of that, taking that position and putting it in their budget, in place of that, they gave you these other positions to cut.
The
So
school
they
has
gave
given
us
us,
$100,000 to cut. It just wasn't the ones that you thought.
they did give other positions to cut. Again, the school has worked with us, and, you know, they were pretty adamant, they wanted the $200,000 in laptops in there. There was a program that they wanted to start up, and I keep getting it wrong, but, you know, a Portuguese program with a, and, you know, so, and they're important programs, and they are not going forward with them this year. So they have made concessions, you know, they,
Well, yeah, on a $2.3 million increase, that, you know,
again, these are.
they're still getting their $200,000 in laptops.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying,
But that money is free cash capital money, so it's not really, you know, the laptops came out of their operating, yeah, they're still getting them, but it's not money that we can bet on things.
Yeah, no, I support the $200,000 for laptops. I'm glad they earmarked for it, but it's not like they're, the positions.
still getting their
I mean, I don't like, if we've got funding for those positions, it's sort of like a great, why aren't we using that funding and deal with this next year? Because, you know, we don't know where this economy is gonna be. And I go back to, because I heard Matt a couple weeks ago, loud and clear, it's like, let's be conservative on the revenue side. And I feel like all of a sudden, in 2 weeks, we found $600,000 in local receipts. And it's like, really? And it's like, we've got grant money, why don't we use that and deal with it next year?
It compounds next year also, because you have the cost of living type increase that happens in every department across the board next year, so you're 6 of one, half a dozen of another at some point, and it has to be filled. And I would venture to say that there's a reason why they feel adamant about keeping that for this year. And I know they're trying to avoid a funding cliff, but there may be more to it than that.
But with this town budget, is it really sustainable over the next couple of years? When you look at the contractual obligations that we have, just for the schools, $1 million in contractual obligations, right out of the gate. We have to fund that for the schools. And now you look at the police and the fire, just right out of the gate, we have to fund that. We have a contract. We're gonna find the money for it. We're not even adding any positions. How is this sustainable? Healthcare, where's that gonna be? The retirement, we have to contribute to that. I mean, it's nice, they want these positions. The police, you know, they had those positions in the budget last year. They're not there this year. And I think it is the right thing to do if we know we're not gonna fill them, why put them in the budget? But still, if you're the police, you sort of feel like, well, you just cut us 5 positions. Because they were in our budget last year, they're not there this year.
Yeah, and again, the conversation was, he understands why we're doing it and understands that he's gonna be asking to put them back next year, the year after that probably.
it does seem like there's a decent amount of reservation for this one particular thing. Is there any way we can go back to them again?
To
School?
school committee?
So
Yes.
we have to vote on this tonight,
Yeah, no, I know, I'm just,
just saying.
I was trying to be nice.
I appreciate that.
I was, this thing, that, you know, those are the concern. I just don't understand how the town planner got back. I think you misunderstood, at least me last week. I was afraid that we were going to cut other positions in order to balance the budget and keep these open police positions. I wasn't advocating for the town planner. When the planning committee was here, I specifically asked them to send me the justification for that position. I have received nothing. I still don't have a good feel for how much we lose by not having that position and how much we gain by having that position.
Well, and the only thing I won't speak for the planning board on it, but I did meet with Rockland. They are, and I've spoken to some members of the planning board, but a regional planner shared between the two towns makes sense. They're willing to explore it, I'm willing to explore it, and it'll help us in the recruitment. It will help us push forward and monitor and sort of steward the master plan of the town. There's a master plan done, and it kind of looks at what we want our town centers to look like, what we want Route 18 to look like, what we want our parks and our rec areas to look like. And, you know, so in a long-term, big picture look, that's what they're gonna do. We have people here in-house right now, between Liz Shea, John Stone, there's folks who are at the fire department, down in the health department, people are actively, constantly seeking grant money and getting it. A lot of times we find the grant money, and I have one sitting on my desk, $100,000 earmark, and it's like, all right, well, not like I don't have anything else to do, but now I gotta figure out how to leverage this $100,000 earmark to do some downtown initiatives. So the planner would do things like that. And they'd be good at it. And having a regional one would certainly make a lot of sense if it's with Rockland because of our, you know, if you look at some of our centers, our North Abington Center, Route 18, the issues that we're going to be experiencing as the SRA moves forward with any issues at the base. So, you know, I can justify it. I can see having it. I mean, I can justify why we should have an HR position too. I can justify a lot of things. It's just, it's not sustainable.
Does Rockland have it in their budget?
Yep. Yeah, they've had it in their budget for over a year. They didn't fund it enough to attract anybody.
Doesn't it help also with things like, we don't, you know, people complaining about we don't want another used car lot, or we want things to look more like this, or we want to attract this type of business in town as opposed to this type, that might bring in more revenue to the town.
I've heard all these things, but I've never seen anything written out, you know, a plus, minus, positives, and
I don't know, and I don't know that
Maybe
it's
it's
even
just me,
possible to
you know?
quantify it,
Yeah.
except I've worked in the town that had several planners the whole time I was there. Some of them were better than others. And so some of the initiatives that they put forward were really good. They had other issues there with sea level rise and stuff to deal with, but, you know, Whitman was a community where we didn't have a planner. And I thought that it was probably would have been best if we had one. However, their towns have done fine, their stores have been full. So, you know, we can go either way. I don't know, but I do know that I got the sense from everybody else on this board, certainly, that they wanted to continue to explore the idea of a planner, and that the town has been talking about it long enough. I think that the best thing for the town and the best way to afford it would to be working with Rockland on the joint planner.
so
And
the 89,000 would be our half of the,
I would expect it would be less than that. I think it would be somewhere in the realm of 65,000 would be our half all in, give or take. But, you know, obviously we need a bit of a buffer there. So that's our hope. I think if, you know, if
Thank
it
you.
gets approved at town meeting,
yeah.
we'll
okay.
go forward and see what happens.
All right, thank you.
And Chris, I
Yeah.
don't know if I misunderstood your particular take on the town planner last week, but I really felt that the overall tenor from the board as a whole was that we really wanted to see if there was a way to put the town planner into this specific budget.
Okay, yeah, I was
That to me felt
remote,
like,
so I didn't.
to me felt
Oh,
like,
that's right.
that's right. It felt like the kind of overwhelming view of the majority of the board last week.
And I wish we could go to tape, because I think Sarah summed it up best last week when she talked about it. I thought she nailed it, why we need it, because it really is forward thinking. And the town needs
Okay.
something like this.
All right, anything else on the budget balancing that Andrew put together?
What is the finalized debt schedule and enterprise reimbursements? What does that reflect?
So we were counting on paying for the sewer force main, which we would charge the sewer enterprise fund, because all debt is paid out of the general fund. We'd charge the enterprise fund and transfer that money. But based on the timing of the payments, there's not a principal payment in '24. The first principal payment would be in fiscal '25. That's when we can start charging them, so.
Gotcha.
And the reduce heating rates gone down a little, if we look at usage, like which
We're
will lead to that?
I think gas prices have come down, natural gas prices have come down. And hopefully sometime during the summer, we'll be able to work with our energy consultant to lock in something.
Yeah, our contract actually ran out, or runs out the end of this month, so we're gonna start negotiating and looking for another long-term plan, so we think we'll find some savings there. We can lock it in at a good time over the summer.
And one of the other questions I had was, both of these are in the new section. Keep assessor's clerk at part-time hours and move the assessor's clerk to full-time hours.
So,
We could make up our mind.
right, I originally cut it, but it's not really that much money. And the reason why there's a difference in the numbers there was a clerical
Agreed.
settlement that I didn't put in so clerical union MOA, it's in the gray section up top. I forgot to put that in the assessor's portion in there, so that's why it's a little bit different than when it came out.
So what is it?
So in this budget, it is back in the budget. to
As
Make the part-time position a full-time.
full-time hours, okay.
Good.
So it's a net like $1,000 or $1,200 or something like that?
Well,
Yeah.
and I think that the discussion was that the cost, if we kept it this, well, by moving it into full-time, there's also savings about $6,000 in what we pay to Patriot,
Vision.
Oh, Vision.
I think that's the
The
name.
contracted
whoever the
service.
contractors are. So there will be a little bit more, not that it won't reflect on the budget, but there is a savings offset.
And I feel like I want to reiterate too, that the police positions that are being removed from the budget are known that there's no plan to fill them in this coming year. But that in following years, we can add more positions to the budget as the chief plans to fill them as we go. So just want to make sure I reiterate that there is a purpose behind that. So. Anything else?
So can I, to that point then, so then there's a bit of a flaw in the way this budget is put together then, because the police contract was not factored into it. Because-
Is factored in.
It's
You
there.
mean the
original
the
budget did not
initial
take into
budget-
consideration.
Budget, so the initial budget, and I'll kind of field this for Scott on this one. The initial budget, the police contract was still in the early negotiation stages. And so we didn't know what the value of the contract was. And as negotiations went and either got close to or got a full agreement on that, it got factored in, and that's what we had to adjust for because the contract was more money than may have been initially estimated.
Right, but until we discussed last week, the way we were gonna cover it was, we're gonna leave the positions in place and just say, oh, we'll use it for something else.
I think that was what the plan was until the plan was put before us as a pit.
Right.
And we didn't necessarily agree with that plan, and this is now the adjustment for.
Well, right, and that's what I'm saying, it feels like there's a flaw in this process, because we're this far into it, we're 2 weeks away from town meeting, and yet we're $420,000 shows up, and we really hadn't talked about it before, even though we've been meeting since January.
Yeah,
And
the good
in
sign
good-
is it'll only happen every 3 years.
In good faith bargaining too, you don't put those types of, you can't put those types of figures aside because he's trying to bargain, they're trying to bargain. It's a game of
No, I understand that piece of it, but if we're saying good faith, you present a budget to us without that in there? That, I don't feel that's good faith. To present the budget to us, when you know this could be $400,000 less, more, and it's
Paul,
not
I
there.
think a lot of it is too that we're asking questions as a committee that weren't really asked necessarily before. And so it's a learning, I think, for everyone, you know, us and the department heads. So next year, I would imagine that it wouldn't happen the same way.
Well,
Well, we
You wouldn't
can't
know
because
the-
we're not in a
and-
contract yet.
Well, yeah, well, maybe it's another
In
department.
most instances, when there are union contracts that are being renegotiated and are being negotiated kind of right up until the end of the budget process, the increase in the contract isn't as large as this one is, and there's, the adjustments to cover the increase in the contract, aren't as drastic as they were in this case. In this case, it was planned to cover with positions we knew weren't going to be filled. We, as a committee, didn't particularly like that and wanted to address it in a more long-term way because it's a longer-term contract. So I think in most instances, like the library contract, the increase was tens of thousands, like maybe $18,000. So not something that we had to finagle a lot of things around to make up for at the last minute. Fire contract, a little bit more than library, but not where we're seeing with the police. And previous police contracts were not what this police contract was. Scott and the police department and the police union were trying to adjust problems that have come before us as a committee with the police department for the entire time I've been on the committee, probably the entire time Barbara's been on the committee, with a lot of what this contract covers. So this contract's a lot heavier than what we normally see in this process.
And
which
we
is, I
were
think,
throwing
why it's
around
standing.
some numbers last week without giving, we were throwing around figures without giving numbers, right? Because we were saying those positions, which are dollar amounts, that we're not going to fill, would be looking to cover that, the upcoming police contract. So if you added up those positions, we were expecting to be in the ballpark of what you were going to need for, so we weren't saying an exact number, but we were saying this is how we would cover it.
And it is nice to have a contract settled in the current year without having to wait 3 or 4 years, so,
Yes.
well
I
done.
think everybody's gonna be happy
Yeah,
about it.
yeah,
Yes.
that's a
And-
that's a
Hopefully the
positive.
police are.
And
For sure.
like I said at the beginning, I think for the department, the contract is the priority over unfilled positions, which is how we got to where we're at here after we pushed last week.
And hopefully that will start to help towards the bigger problem of not being able to fill the positions.
Retention.
It
and
absolutely will,
positions.
yeah. And, you know, we're in a good position right now. Again, like I said, we have 3 recruits that are coming out of the academy pretty soon. You know, so he has a good staff and the ability to get a couple in right behind them. And, you know, he's confident that they're gonna be, you know, he's confident that they're gonna be able to work it out.
So we still do have two
It's 2 vacants, right?
2 and 1?
Two patrol and 1 sergeant. They're still.
Still in the budget?
Yes.
Okay.
So technically, there could be 3 new hires and a promotion.
Yes.
Which even with a new contract would be tough to get. You know, we have to, well, you know, even going through the process of getting out of civil service, there'll still be a little bit of time before they'll actually be able to recruit and getting a whole nother group into the academy, so.
Which is a whole nother can of worms. Are we going to be discussing that?
Yeah,
So.
we'll get there.
Moving stormwater to ARPA, that qualifies?
Yep, well, there is a whole pile of money in Plymouth County that is
Yes.
specifically for infrastructure, stormwater maintenance, water, sewer. So it makes perfect sense to do that probably this year, next year. And then, you know, Andrew and I have some ideas about that, but I think we have to actually have conversations with the sewer commissioners on it, because it's probably something that, you know, should be either a surcharge to the ratepayers or whatever, but that, you know, there should be a fund or, you know, that's coming through that. It's probably not something that really belongs in our operating. It really should be somewhere in that sewer department. So we'll take it for the next probably 2 years through the Recovery Plan Act money, and then we'll deal with it after that.
Anything else?
Well, I always point out at this point that we're not really balanced, because next year we're going to have to take money from this budget that isn't in here and cover snow and ice, because we're not covering snow and ice now.
Maybe next year there'll only be $100,000 for snow and ice.
Well, this year is,
280.
there's no number in the article yet, so
Hold on.
We'll have it when we get to it.
Yes.
If
As we
get to
said,
it.
But
as
I
we said
suspect
last
it's
week,
not
I think it was
zero,
still
and,
snowing as we met last week, so.
And we're also not funding, what's the unfunded liability on OPEB?
Yeah, what's that amount?
I'd have to ask the treasurer for that.
Yeah. But maybe it's lower this year than it was last year, because the rate is so much higher, but.
Well, what is it?
Probably you don't change the assumption, probably. based on what
I can dig up the report and send
No,
it to you
that's
all.
all right.
What was
I
it?
don't really need to know, it's
It was
just.
94 million last year.
Yeah, just making a point that we still haven't funded it, even though we said last year we were gonna fund it with the marijuana money. But
You didn't trigger him. You didn't trigger
I
him on
was
that one.
waiting.
Yeah.
Maybe we just didn't make enough yet.
yeah,
I think that's really the answer.
the town is too sober.
All right, anything else on the budget balancing from Andrew? Okay, great. Thank you, Andrew and Scott, for the efforts behind that. I'm really excited to see the town planner in there.
Can't wait to introduce you to
Yeah.
the successful candidate.
All right, so next we're going to go back into the warrant articles, the ones left over from last week. We do have a new copy. I don't know if you still have your old one, but I have the old one here for reference. My understanding is not much has changed yet as far as numbers being input, but, so Scott, what we'll do is I'll just run through the ones that I still have open, and I'll ask if we have updated numbers for them. So snow and ice costs.
We do have an updated number, but
It's not
probably, you know, what did we say, it was 280,
264.
264? However, I think you probably should wait, and we can deal with that before town meeting, on the off shot something happens between now and then.
I'm wondering if we should vote recommendation, because that's probably what we're gonna do. And then reopen it if the numbers change between now and town meeting.
I like that idea.
Fair enough.
So a motion to recommend approval of Article 1 for snow and ice costs.
Second.
The motion seconded. Is there any discussion?
Chris?
Is there an amount in there?
We gotta do it.
264.
Motion to
My problem
recommend
is we don't
as,
budget for it.
as amended with the $264,000.
Are you changing your motion?
Yes. Recommending as amended.
Second.
Motion seconded. Any discussion?
Free cash.
Free cash.
No discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's approved. All right, next is the operating budget, which is in the new documents, Article 4. Do you guys want me to read it?
Yeah. One and every-
Motion to approve Article 4, fiscal year 2024 operating budget.
Second.
The motion seconded. Is there any discussion?
We've had a lot of
We
discussion.
have had.
Yeah, there's any more discussion.
Is there any?
Well, I still think, I think we should take the ESSER funds and reduce local revenues and take the ESSER money and have the schools use that.
I agree.
Any other discussion?
Can we do that at this point?
Nope. Not unless you want to go into two separate budgets.
I think it's something to consider for next year.
Like as in it's,
Well, next
or-
year-
Well, I mean, just
Yes, it won't be
a
there.
sharper look
as in
at
it's
what's going
impossible,
on there.
or somebody will just be not happy.
As in, I'm not changing my town manager recommended budget. If you want to have a finance committee recommended budget, we chose it different.
And it is possible for someone to raise something like this on the floor of town meeting if they so choose.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Operating budget.
One more thing.
Sure.
You just explain the rationale that we're not gonna spend the $100,000.
The $100,000 is in their
The
budget.
school department
I
is
have
spending.
no control over how they spend it and how they.
Actually, they
allocate it.
will spend it, they just moved something over here,
So they took positions that were being paid for by a grant.
right?
That they want to keep as permanent, long-term, year-to-year,
Right.
year-to-year positions. They moved them into their operating budget, and they are spending the grant money for something else.
Correct.
I don't know if Scott
I have
knows.
no idea what else.
I don't know if Selectman Haggerty knows, or, but it would be probably someone from the school department or the school committee that might know what that $100,000 is being spent for.
It was money already in their budget.
It was in their budget, it was
Yes.
never in the town side budget. It was something that
Right from the start.
I asked them to move over,
Yeah.
to not ask as their new.
Right from the start, their proposed budget had that being spent for other purposes than the positions. They had the positions in their operating budget from the start. And they're not spending it on laptops.
But at some point, it was for that.
No.
It was for that last year.
Yeah, last year.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
Yes.
it was,
It was, or this fiscal
whatever,
year.
what, 23.
Not, these ESSA funds were not the laptop funds.
No, no, he's saying for the positions.
The positions?
Yes.
The
Just
position,
position.
this current fiscal year that we are currently in and paying, the positions in question are being paid for by the grant money, by
Right.
the ESSER funds, yes. And they switched that for the fiscal year '24 budget, the one we're talking over now, to have those positions in the operating budget and use the grant money for something else for the last year that they have the grant money. Does that make sense now?
Yeah, 100%. That's, I understand it, I just don't really understand why. But nobody has to give me a why. I can just vote a specific
I
way.
think it's the school department that would be able to give us
Yeah,
a why, and
yeah, got it.
we don't have that right now.
Sure.
But I think the why in general with the positions is they want those positions to continue past when the grant money runs out. So they're transitioning the positions into their operating budget.
Yeah, my fear is that next year, we're gonna have to look at a lot of these different positions, especially new ones. 'Cause new ones are the easiest ones, or the first ones usually to have an issue, if there's an issue. And just, it puts more burden on this particular committee, but also, I guess, on them, so.
But let me ask, does it put the pressure, because we don't dictate their budget. The town only approves one number.
Yeah, but if there's an issue, it's all gonna come here, and you're, you know.
Right, but
My-
we can't sit, like with the police, we made that, said, hey, listen, we don't want to fund that. We can't do that with the schools. If we give them a $200,000 less, they can do whatever they want. Say, well, we're not going to fund those three positions. They can do whatever they want. Because all they're getting is a bucket of money from
It's a
the town.
good, it's a good point.
Yeah.
So the motion is to recommend approval. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
No,
No.
Greg?
3 no. Yeah, I gotta do math now. So with 6 ayes and 3 noes, the motion passes as approved. Let me just take a note real quick on the noes.
We can certainly have Mr. Schaefer or someone come and speak to this at their next meeting.
That
Whether
would
it's before town meeting.
Before
or
town
whatever.
meeting, that would be great.
Yeah, he can come in and explain the foundational budget too. Now we get a little overview over
How
it.
much time you'll have before.
No, I'm just saying, another meeting, let's look at the whole thing.
Okay, so the next open article is purchase of vacant land off Central Street. Believe we were
Yeah.
waiting the sum of money.
So we're gonna pop in,
That's Article 10 on page 5 now.
yeah. We have to have it appraised. I spoke with the town council about it today. I had offered a $165,000 for the property. We have it assessed in that general area. I would put in $175 now. When and if we take it and or purchase it, it will be done as part of the project, most likely as part of the project, if the project gets approved, in borrowed with the DPW project. If not, then we'll seek alternate ways to pay for it. But we'll likely end up back in front of town meeting in the fall. Town council said, they recommend putting it in for 175 and just keeping that language because it does allow us to fire it if the property owner has a change of heart and decides to return my phone calls, or if we want to go forward with the eminent domain, and that number comes in, it sort of makes sense.
Does everybody remember where this lot is?
This is
Yes.
like the turnaround at the new DPW station, right?
Yeah.
To the right of the police station, right?
Yep.
Okay.
What's the funding source?
It will eventually, I guess it'll go into the borrowing when we do
With
the
the project.
DPW project. We won't need to really worry about it unless the guy actually
Yeah.
gets back to me, in which case we'll make
But
it
if-
subject to
but if
approval
we're-
of that.
If we're voting it,
Yeah.
kind of want to not have that open,
Right.
so.
So do you feel like it's still open-ended?
No, the funding source comes in the motion.
Yeah,
more than
we'll,
the-
when we
the
meet
article.
tomorrow.
I was just
Okay.
trying to figure out what it would actually be and what we're going to say. So,
So,
town moderator is in the audience tonight.
The charter and bylaws.
can you go to the mic, Sean?
Nice. Good call.
Sean Riley, 271 Dorsey Street, Town Moderator, classmate of Abington High School, Paul Haggerty, much to my chagrin. The charter and the bylaw require you guys to make recommendations for each article. And one part of it says, and a brief explanation. Some of them are, the article speaks for itself. Some of them are simply, Finance Committee recommends approval of this article and it to be funded with $5,000 from free cash. Okay, that's also the motion, or will likely be the exact motion. Some of them are just, non-monetary articles, the Memorial Bridge preservation. Finance Committee recommends approval of this article as presented, period. In this one, it's up to you. If you know that it's going to be a borrowing situation, you could say, Finance Committee recommends approval of the article and that it be funded by borrowing. And if that was the actual final thing, that town council or bond council will give the chairman a detailed motion to read at the time. So in your recommendations to be printed and filed with the town clerk, it's really short, that gives people an indication of, yes, we approve it, and this is where the money would come from. Free cash, borrowing, transfer from health insurance, or whatever it's gonna be. And if you wanted to add in some of these, like maybe this one, as to why you think we should buy this land, because it could be, good long-term municipal planning for the town.
And, Sean, whether we borrow as in we borrow with the project, or we borrow as in we go out and borrow just for this particular item, either way, it's to borrow.
Yeah, for your recommendation tonight, it's just to borrow, because it really comes down to the town financial officer will decide it's 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, what terms and all.
We also have there in the language that we'll raise appropriated. We may be in a position that we want to use Recovery Plan Act money for it, or if next year was much better than we expect, we may say, let's just buy it with free cash.
So we would have in the language.
So on the off shot that the DPW project doesn't.
Well, that's what I'm saying, so.
Doesn't
See, yeah,
materialize.
doesn't make the day. We do already have that in this article that says we're either gonna borrow it, or we're gonna acquire it by gift, purchase of it, or eminent domain, or fee simple.
Raise an
interest in the
appropriate transfer of
property.
it.
So it's sort of, everything's in there, all of
Okay.
our options are in there, so I don't know on this particular one, which option at this point is gonna be the best one for us.
But we've
There's a
covered
lot
all
of
the
moving
bases
parts.
already in the article,
Yeah.
so that,
I think, to your point, maybe saying borrow is probably the safest,
Yep.
because nobody's gonna be mad if we go out and use some other fund and not borrow for it.
And if you recall, the next step, after you make some of your final votes tonight, we'll publish your recommendations. Scott has a policy of also adding his commentary under, one or two sentences to help explain the article, so the voter can read the warrant and pretty much have a good feel for what this vote's about, which helps the meeting move along. But also between now and town meeting, town council helps us draft the actual motion, so that when they vote yes or no, it's a proper legal vote. So the specific wording of the borrowing will be put in there, and as Matt was mentioning earlier, any sort of funding article, we have to also name the source. If we know it and we can put it in the recommendation, great, let's do that. It's just one more piece of information we can share 10 days in advance of the meeting. So I'm taking notes as to what your votes are. I'm gonna try to add to it, try to get it to you, Dan, and to you guys, and we'll make sure it looks good for when we post it. And there's always the opportunity to make a change at town meeting in the form of a motion, because you have new information between now and then. But for right now, this gives residents, your recommendations 10 days in advance, gives recommendations, kind of a flight path of where you're recommending they should go. All right?
thank you, Sean.
So are we saying right now that we're gonna borrow?
I would say right now, it's pretty, say that we're going to borrow, and we have all our options available to us. If we were going to do something different and use free cash, we would have to make that change if we specifically just say borrow on the
They
motion.
blanketed
So
everything.
we'll have a motion tomorrow, when we talk with council, that may be a little more broad, but
Weren't we getting up there on the borrowing?
we are.
Yes, we are.
Again.
Not that this would put it, I'm not
The idea of
stating
this,
that,
to
but-
borrow it, would be as part of, hopefully as part of the DPW project, which will be a larger borrow. So my hope would be that if that's going forward, then this will get wrapped up into that. It's a piece of property, though, that the town should probably acquire one way or the other. Good night.
Motion to approve Article 10, purchase of land off Central Street.
Is it as amended with the 175?
Yes. For $175,000.
Second, on motion?
So the motion's been seconded. Any further discussion on this?
So if we follow the spirit of that financial policy that we had, would we be able to borrow $175,000? Because I thought we were up against that policy that we, in the spirit of it, we wouldn't be able to borrow $175,000.
I don't know that I don't know that we're that.
Yeah, I don't think-
You have to look at
What was it,
our-
5% or something like that
It's 5%.
of our total budget?
And I think, and the budget has gone up this year over where it was last year when we were figuring out. I think we definitely still had some wiggle room. I don't know what the terms of the borrow would be and how much the yearly payment would be, so I feel like 175,000 isn't gonna push us over the top of the spirit of the proposed financial.
Do we have
plan.
any of the
Not at all.
borrowing?
We do. We've got the ambulance and the capital plan, and then the improvement projects, funding of roadway infrastructure improvement, which we don't think we'll borrow.
Yeah.
And the
We were gonna
ambulance-
remove borrow from that. if
Did we remove it?
We haven't, but I think you said,
And the ambulance,
still there.
we know because of back order for ambulances won't be
Right.
within this fiscal year.
And that other
Right.
debt was with the debt schedule, there'll be debt falling off as that comes on.
So I don't think there's other borrowing in the coming fiscal year.
Did we remove the borrow?
I think it's still on this draft, but we're moving on mine right now on that. We're jumping ahead, but I'll do that.
Does that answer your question?
Well, I wasn't planning on it. We voted on that already. I wasn't gonna bring it up today. Any other discussion? So the motion's to recommend approval as amended to include the 175,000. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Can I abstain
I'm
from
gonna
this one?
say no.
Because you made them tear down the house?
What's that?
Because you made them tear down the house?
No, yeah, literally that, in 2019.
It's a one abstention.
You probably should have stayed for this one.
Yep.
Okay. Gosh, that's math again.
Thought you were awfully quiet down there.
801.
Sorry.
Seven ayes, one abstention, and one no.
There was one no?
I made.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear you.
I know, there was a lot of commotion over the abstention. Okay, so funding of union contracts would be next.
Yeah, we're not gonna have, numbers for you until
Okay.
town meeting. I mean, we can tell you what they are, but we haven't ratified anything yet with selectmen, so I'd rather you didn't vote.
Sure.
But it's-
And for the chairman's benefit, that one is typically left to be voted right before town.
I do remember that.
Every year.
So
We don't get some of money in the warrant?
What's that?
The phrase, I'm sorry, Scott, Andrew.
Sum of money.
I think right now, we'll transfer from available funds, where's here, what department?
Can you
The
state your
sum
name?
of,
The warrant as it's currently drafted has a sum
dollar
of
sign.
blank for each of the three. The warrant doesn't actually have to put the number in, it has to give people notice of what the subject matter is. If you know the number, again, more information up front, the better. But there are plenty of other examples where we would say in this example that we're going to transfer or raise and appropriate a sum of money to fund the police contract and the fire contract and the library contract. And then at the time of town meeting, as they're still kind of fine tuning the numbers, the motion from Dan, the finance committee chair, would have those numbers in the motion. So I would rather print a warrant without blanks, but instead just reword it
Say a
slightly and
sum
say
of
a sum
money.
of money. Right.
And I will say the reason that we tend to wait until right before town meeting is, like Scott said, if the agreement is not ratified, we shouldn't vote on the agreement. So if they're not ratified, we should wait to see what is actually ratified before town meeting,
Yeah.
regardless of what the sum is.
So we'll just keep passing over, not passing over, but take no action for right now.
So do we need to, because we have to have something, do we need to have a recommendation of taking no action at this time?
Yes, because the final information is not available, and I'll come up with some wording to put in there for
I'll
you.
make
yeah,
I'll
go
make a
ahead.
motion to take no action on Article 13, funding of union contracts.
As Because final information is not available at this time.
Final information is not available.
So that people
at this
don't read
time.
and say that you're not taking,
Right.
you're not supporting it, you know.
Right. I
there's a
second
reason.
that with that wording.
The motion's to take no action until further information is available. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion's to take no action. Okay, Article, well, that's probably the different number now. Police Department separation from civil service.
Article 18.
We skipped over this last week.
Weren't the selectmen voting on it? Or doing
Contract
something with
wasn't
it?
signed yet.
It's part of the agreement, so it's part of the negotiated agreement with MassDOT.
So I mean, the same language then?
Yeah, you might want to just do that.
So I'll make a motion to take no action on Article 18 until such time as more information is available to us.
Second.
So the motion's to take no action until we get more information. All those in favor, or any discussion?
Is there a reason that we're not doing it for more departments?
The-
Is this the only
This is the
department?
only one.
So the fire isn't one? I thought fire was.
Fire is civil service,
Right.
and at this point, there is really no need. There hasn't been any recruitment issues because of it. They are not interested in separating, and we're not recommending it.
And if we're not in civil service or fire, they can still go through civil service, can't they? No, I know, but the fire. Like, fire could still go through civil service if they wanted to, correct? Or no, not at all?
If we get out of civil service,
Yep.
we cannot.
They only can hire from outside of it.
Somebody who is in civil service, if they wanted to go to a department that is not in civil service,
Yes.
they can do that.
Okay,
But they will no longer be covered under civil service rules.
got it.
It hasn't been an issue. Typically, when you're negotiating these contracts, there's a price to be paid for them to come out of civil service. Again, there hasn't been an issue with fire, and that's, the recruitment seems to work for them, everything about it seems to work for them, so, if it wasn't broken, we didn't want to really mess with it.
Okay, thanks.
And so if they approve that, is that going to trigger a reopening of the fire contract?
This will have nothing to do with the fire.
So this is only police.
No, I know, but sometimes if one union, parity bargaining, if one union agrees to something, it could trigger a reopening of another union's collective bargaining agreement. No?
So you've been negotiating both contracts at the same
Okay,
time.
Yeah.
so they're aware of
My
that?
guess is.
Yeah, no,
they're
we have,
aware what the
we always
others-
have the discussion on day one. Anybody want to get out of civil service? They say no.
Okay.
So, and again, it's just two different animals, as far as how it works and issues that we've run into it, so.
And so then the town would be, we'd have to contract out for a vendor to do the civil service test and the physical abilities test?
We would do it through someone else. And, like we have in the, part of the negotiation is putting together what those rules are. Making sure that we don't eliminate any sort of preference for residents or veteran status or things like that when you're recruiting. The physical test will be the same, psychological test will be the same, the process will be the same, it'll just be under our control as opposed to
The civil
civil
service?
service control.
But we have to, right now, civil service provides those tests for us, so we'd have to contract with somebody else to
Yeah.
basically
Well,
create those, correct?
Yeah, either contract, there's many other towns that have done it, it's not like we're reinventing the wheel
No,
either. The other, and the other part of it also gives us that, a much better recruitment or a much better span of recruitment. With the civil service test, when you ask for your test, you get sort of a short list of candidates that meet the criteria for your community and wanted to be on that list or whatever, and that's all you have. And if you have 3 vacancies, they may only give you the top 7 people, or top 6 people, or whatever it might be, and the other ones can move on to other communities. So it's sort of a hit or miss list, as opposed to be able to just say, hey, we're hiring, if anybody's interested, here's what we offer. It's a great organization to work for, and, you know, you want to join a nice, energetic bunch of people, come on along.
And
I
do
think
the-
too, in the climate right now, where we are finding that this isn't a job that is easy to fill,
Yeah.
and it's anything that we can do to widen that net when we're looking to hire is going to work to our benefit, in my opinion.
And in your experience, will those, whatever contracted agency we use, will they defend those exams if we're sued for some reason, disparate impact or something like that? Is that typically in the agreement? Because that's a huge liability.
Yeah, I mean, we'll work with our council on them, you know, with our labor council to make sure that they work and they've been vetted properly, but hey, look, civil service just got sued, so.
But they defend those. We have to
Yeah,
defend
so
our civil service
I would
exams.
rather defend ourselves than, you know, I think that the benefit to it is far outweigh that.
Any other discussion? So the motion to take no action until more information is provided has been seconded. No further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No?
Was that Andrew?
Yeah, no.
The motion is approved. All right. and I-
So
It's not
just-
approved, yeah.
just-
Oh, yeah.
The motion's,
Motion to
the
take no
motion
action.
You want to take
carried,
action on that right now?
right?
Sure.
'Cause it
Oh,
did
that
the-
was just a
the-
motion to take action, not to.
Take no
Yeah,
action.
I'll
Take
still go
no
no.
action.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just- I thought about it for a second, wait, you wanted to?
Oh,
So,
Did you just change it to?
no, he's
No,
staying,
no,
he's
I'm
staying
sticking with
just
my
to
no.
keep it-
Just to keep it simple.
Consistent.
Not,
Then I don't have to rethink it.
not pushing us. Paul's trying to take out the flag of Massachusetts.
So I believe that's it. Unless, Scott, there's no new, no,
Is there
no
anything
new ones,
that we
right?
have not voted a recommendation on? And then if not, is there anything you want us to reopen?
So if I did this correctly, we have voted on everything. Is there an article that anybody in the committee wants to reopen for further conversation? That's all right. Then we're all set with the warrant articles. Man, that's the last piece on the agenda. Does anybody have any liaison reports? And I already explained the minutes. We'll get more information tomorrow when we meet with council. I'll probably send that, or bring that up at town meeting when we meet then. What time is town meeting? I forget. Is it 6?
7.
7?
7 o'clock on
Shot.
Monday.
Likes to
On,
start right on time.
On the minutes, Scott, doesn't the AGO have like a training basically on how to
I
prepare
tried
meetings
finding,
and?
we have, there's a guidebook, and I tried finding, any specific training, again, we'll talk with council, I thought they would have some sort of advisory, they have pages and pages of policies, but I couldn't find anything, other than just their basic guide, but I'll dig it up, I mean, if there is a YouTube training or something like that out there, I just haven't had the time to dig it out of there, but we'll keep looking.
Mr. Chair, just a couple of quick things. So I will try to update this draft warrant with Finance Committee recommendations to insert your recommendations. So maybe after your meeting, if I can just hang around with you and just make sure I got what you voted in tonight in the prior meeting. If any of you think you will not be able to attend town meeting, if you could just let me know, just so I can tell the custodial staff that we don't need 9 chairs, we need 7 or whatever it is. I wanted to use the cable TV to remind people that town meeting is on Monday, April 3rd at 7 o'clock at the auditorium of the new middle high school. We ask that you get there 15 to 20 minutes early so you can check in and get a seat. We do need 150 registered voters to be present before we can start the meeting, so we urge people to kind of spread the word, bring a spouse, bring a friend, acquaintance, whatever you got. What's that? Registered voter, right? And again, if you can try to arrive a little before 7 o'clock so we can get started. I think the financial officers and the financial committee, the finance committee, first of all, I want to thank you guys, because for those at home who don't know, you're all volunteers. A lot of people watch these meetings, so my feeling is that people who do attend town meeting already come well prepared and well educated because of the questions you ask, so I want to thank you. It really helps move things along. I don't anticipate this being a long town meeting, but I would like to try to start it as quickly as possible on time. So again, 150 voters, registered voters are required. It's kind of a big ask nowadays with a lot of other things that distract attention from people, but we can do it in one night. It's really important for the town to set our goals and invest in our town for next year. So anything you can do to spread the word would be greatly appreciated, and I look forward to seeing you on the 3rd of April.
Yeah, and there's one thing that, and Sean and I talked about this earlier, some of these grant opportunities will expire if we don't take care of it.
Yeah.
So we have to get this money appropriated for the 2 grant matches, otherwise we could lose up to $800,000 worth of grant money if we, for some reason, didn't get this town meeting done.
And I also wanted to thank, Kevin Tachi. Scott and I taped a show this morning where we reviewed the warrant to try to, again, have another means of trying to get the word out and try to educate the public before the meeting. And I want to thank a lot of the business owners in town. We sent out a notice to them, those who have digital signs, to ask them to advertise and publicize the April 3rd town meeting, and they've all been great at doing that. So we're doing our best to try to spread the word, and I hope the community comes together and really...
Sean, will you put that informational up on the, like the Life in Abington type, as well as the town's website, or?
Yeah, I'm not a big Facebook person, so I'll get someone who will do that.
That's what
Sam can do that?
was here earlier,
Yeah.
and she's gonna she'll start blasting that out on our site.
Twitter.
Anybody sees it,
I've been putting posters up at the Abington Bank and Sub Galley, Brothers Roast Beef. We're putting wherever we can kind of spread the word in different forums, this being one of them.
and there's swag bags this year too. Our department will have their swag bags. Glad you started that?
I regret nothing.
There could be a prize in one of those bags.
An autograph from the town manager.
They might be.
I get your trading card, get the rookie
All right,
one from
thanks, Sean.
1972.
Appreciate that. All right, so,
Correspondence?
no, there is no correspondence. I know. I skipped a couple weeks, too. So with town meeting starting at 7, we, want to be up there at 6:45.
We have to
When-
meet beforehand.
At 6.
Well, I was getting to that. Can everybody meet at 6 at the school?
I will find a room, there'll be a room assigned to you, I'll find out what it is and make
Okay.
sure I get it to you.
Is there anybody that may not be able to make the 6 o'clock timeframe for our meeting?
6:15 might happen,
Okay,
but
okay.
So any of
Anybody
the
else?
stuff that Greg voted no on, we can reopen.
Yeah, right away, first
Right
one,
at
yeah.
the start.
Yeah. Okay, very good. So we're all planning to get there at 6 or 6:15, and close up any open warrants, any additional information, and then we'll get on stage there. So,
Scott and Andrew, I wanted to just say thank you for going back through again.
Yeah.
And trying hard to, not going to please everybody, but
And-
you definitely put a lot of effort into trying to get as much of a consensus as you could.
Every good negotiation,
Hmm.
city goes, or everybody goes away.
Yeah.
Seconding Barbara's
appreciated.
thanks, you guys have been very responsive throughout this process to our requests and to the stated desires of this committee or preferences of this committee, which I feel like you've been a little bit more responsive than some years in the past have been. People in your positions have been. So
Yeah.
I feel like we as a committee had a little bit more say in what was happening this year. And that feels good, so thank you.
Well, again, we need your direction. It does help we can't do it without you guys. And we can't say that enough when we are at town meeting or on AbCam or whatever. It's the hardest working committee. Sorry about that in the background there, but it really is.
No comment.
Having been on both of them in other towns, that this is definitely, you get a lot done in a short amount of time, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I can just second, I want to say thank you to Andrew. Outstanding job this year. It's like the data that you're pulling together, we're only going to get better because of that, and thank you for everything you've done.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Been
we do
excellent.
look forward to having that meeting where we can sort of figure out next year's process.
And so,
we can improve on it.
financial policies still June 30th?
June 30th.
You said that a couple of months ago. Yeah, you
Got a
did.
meeting. I
Let's go to the minutes.
Of
My
what
brewer's
years?
coming here tomorrow, actually.
Paul.
Of what year?
No,
Nope, this is the year.
This
There
is
are always,
it.
there are always
This is the
loopholes.
year.
If you didn't say June 30th of a specific year.
So that's actually something I want to bring up too.
I
So
don't want to let Paul down.
it, you know, after town meeting, it's almost like we kind of go on recess a bit there. But when things come up that would be of interest to the committee, is everybody here open to meeting outside of the normal, I don't know, block of the year to discuss those things?
I mean, things will come up. We will be looking typically, when do we ask to do some line item transfers?
The beginning of July.
So July.
Typically late June, beginning
Yeah.
of July.
And we
So-
do usually have like kind of a touch base after
Yeah,
town meeting, because we have to reorganize. And
We
then
tend
we do
to-
kind of have
We try to meet on average monthly,
I think it'd be good. like,
outside of
again,
the
to have
budget
those
process.
discussions.
And occasionally in the summer, we skip a month here and there.
Yeah.
But,
Don't meet in August, nobody meets in August.
yeah.
But in anticipation, I'm not sure what month or what the date will be for the special town meeting. I do know that we will be having one. At the very least, the DPW fire station DPW project will be on that.
very happy to hear that. 'Cause
Yeah,
I was
well,
a
They-
big proponent of having a fall town meeting, because I feel like there's just too much time in between, if you want to keep people informed. I know it's an expense, but,
I do have a preliminary number for you if anybody wants a little. $700 a square foot, how's that?
There's a preliminary number.
Right, that's pretty good. Rockland's about $800 a square foot for theirs. So right now, the estimate is $58,350,000. And this morning I did ask town, the treasurer collector to run some bond numbers, sort of get us that schedule on what that will look like and feel like. So that's where it's at now, whether, you know, hopefully maybe it'll come down a little bit between now and the special, but that's what we're up against. I do intend to get some information out, and obviously they'll be coming in to meet with you well before that special to start talking about it. The other things, depending on what happens with the final budget from the state, I do anticipate that the House and the Senate budget will probably be slightly better than the governor's budget. There's been a lot of push from my association, and I know also from the school boards, to increase some of that funding, especially on our end, the unrestricted government aid funding hasn't gone up very much this year, although there was a generous kick last year. So there could be monies that we'll be looking to allocate, and I'm hoping there will be. So that's it.
And then we heard from, have we gotten sign off from Powers and Sullivan on the audit?
They haven't given us a final date on that.
They're still working on it.
Still working on it? Because usually it's February they sign off.
They actually, I think it was in February, where they had actually had that email where they were looking for some more information. So,
Blame it on the supply chain. Well,
yeah, paper, a shortage of paper.
All right, anything else? Cool, very good.
Motion to adjourn?
second?
Motion is to adjourn. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.